Okay, hi, Juan Carlos. How you doing?
Hi Tom, how are you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, Juan Carlos, you're our destination partner in Colombia.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
was just thinking how many years it's been since we first came over to Colombia and did some mountaineering and trekking there. By my records, it says 2000, December 2011. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. We started the first expedition. We ran it in December to 2011, yes, and that was in Cocuy back then in the Eastern Cordillera in Colombia.
Yeah. And I think Cuba Blanco, that's the name of the peak, or the highest
Yeah,
peak? Yeah,
correct. Yeah, what we did that back then was a long trek where we did like a circuit around this mountain range, and then we ended up climbing the Cuba Blanco, which was the highest or is the highest in that area.
yeah. And I think it was Neil Short who led that trip and came over with the team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Neil did quite a few expeditions for us around, well, certainly, yeah, over quite a long period, including Everest. Okay, great. Well, yeah, I think just to start off, it'd be brilliant if you could just tell us a bit about your background and how you got into mountaineering and sort of promoting adventure tourism generally in Colombia.
Yes, sure. Well, I started climbing very early, like I think I was 11 years, and that was back in '82 in Colombia. And yes, I climbed many years, and I turned into or became climbing instructor and later a mountain guide. That was around 1988, and then I started guiding in Colombia. But that was just before the Civil War got to its worst part. So yeah, we started guiding in Cocuy, and then we had to stop due to the war. And then there was this big gap while I was living in Europe, and then in 2010 we decided to move back to Colombia with the peace process that was almost finishing. So we decided to give it a go in Colombia and restart the activities in this specific mountain area. And that's when Jagged Globe came in. Also, it was the first group we run in the mountain area for many years. So that was a pioneering experience for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd sort of forgotten that we were there from the start, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's great. And just to wind back, so I mean, so how did you get into climbing? Was that through school or local club or?
Yeah, I went to a British school, and then there was an English teacher who was into climbing back then, and he gathered a group of students, and he took us out to the climbing area, and that's how we actually learned it. It was just like a little bit with him. He was not really an instructor or anything. He just gathered some kids for
Yeah,
going out climbing, and that's how we begin to climb. So it was very empirical back then, in just try and error. Fortunately, it went well in the
yeah.
beginning. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then,
Okay.
yeah, and from then, yeah, we start kind of learning, and then we start to putting a bunch of new routes in that area where we climb, which is Suezca, which is a rock climbing area close to Bogota, close to the capital. Yeah.
Yeah. And were they sort of sport climbs or naturally protected rock climbs or?
That area it's very nice because it has kind of a mixture. At the beginning, it was traditional, only traditional climbing with a lot of cracks. So it's a place where you can do a lot of crack climbing. And then later, we got the visit of some Europeans, and then we got some bolts and anchors, and we started to put up routes like sport climbing routes. Nowadays, it's mainly in sport climbing area, but you can do both. So it's very nice because you have both kinds of climbing. You have also multi-pitch climbing. So it's very good, like a training field or training ground for from big mountains or different activities. You become kind of a very complete climber there if you use like all the possibility it offers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and so, yeah, just to think back to those first trips. So, my memory is, you contacted us and suggested El Cocuy National Park and that area, and certainly we did a few expeditions there, but then we weren't allowed to access the area anymore. How did that come about?
Well, that's really like a political story because after the war, the government wanted to give a lot of autonomy to the local communities and the minorities, like the indigenous communities. So they kind of handed a lot of they could administer the areas that belong to their traditional communities. And many of the mountain areas in Colombia, well, happen to be, of course, like sacred, like all over the world. So some of these communities decided that they just didn't want any more tourism or foreign people in general. In foreign, that means also Colombians that are non-indigenous. So in Cocuy specifically, what happened is that this community decided that they just wanted to keep the areas closed only for them, and that's what happened with our activities there. We were not allowed to run the trips any longer. That's why we had to stop there and then look for a different area where we're working now, which is the Central Cordillera. It's not an indigenous area. It's a national park, but not an indigenous area. That's why we can run the trips nowadays in this area.
Yeah. So we've switched, haven't we? We've had a few years of running a mountaineering trip in Los Nevados National Park with Santa Isabel and Tolima
Exactly.
as the sort of main mountaineering objectives, but we're also looking at developing some more tracks there, aren't we? So yeah, I mean, just generally with sort of adventure tourism, how much has that developed then over the last sort of 14 years?
Yeah, quite a lot, because when we started running the trips there was a big lack of infrastructure, especially related to tourism, but also in general, because after the Civil War, there was very little investment in this area. So Colombia was really, I think, one of the last few countries in the continent that was so poor in terms of infrastructure. And then when we started running the trips, I mean, especially the first one with Jagged Globe and with Neil, I mean, it was just, like out there, the roads were so bad, and, everything was very, very primitive in a way. And the few infrastructure we had access to, it was very bad. But in the last few years, I mean, tourism has been really a bomb that exploded in Colombia from almost one day to another. So there has been a lot of investment, and nowadays, it's very different. For example, roads have improved quite a lot in the last 10 years. Also flights, there's more frequency of flights to the remote areas. And also, especially in the area where we're working now, which is the coffee region. Well, now it's most of these big farms have turned into hotels or some kind of lodging. So there's more and more development from day to day. And for us, even we find activities almost every month. There's something new coming up, could be from just a simple activity to a new hotel or a new restaurant or whatever. So it's really improved a lot nowadays. So it's easier to move around, and yeah, now you can offer better service, but still some areas, especially the remote areas like Los Nevados, is still very basic, but it's improving slowly, and the offer is getting much better.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, and I suppose that brings me on to another question. I mean, certainly the people we've had visit in there. I mean, we had a group quite recently, and they're certainly talking about you know, the sort of cultural side of things, you know, they're going for that as much as the you know, the mountains and the you know, the landscape. I mean, can you expand a little bit on, you know, what people can expect to sort of experience, you know, on these trips?
Yeah, sure. I think, I mean, for me, Colombia, it's like you always have to think in it as a diverse country. And that's what we are known in the world for, a very diverse country. And that it's like in all aspects of life in Colombia, from, you know, from nature, of course, which is the biodiverse country, but also from the cultural point of view. So it's really a very different country from one area to another in terms of difference, and very different, you know, like the race and what the people eat, the traditions, almost how we talk. So I think the experience in Colombia, when you travel here, you always have to think, okay, it's diverse, it's different. And that's the way we put it up, the Jagged Globe trip. We wanted to have a trip where you can see different things in the short period of time people is traveling. And that is what I think what the people experience. You know, when you land in Bogota, you know, it's a huge city of almost 10 million people, you know, with all the things a city of that characteristics it can offer. But also then when you travel to the countryside, it's just like a different country, you know, the atmosphere, the food, the way the people talk, people, how they live. So I think it's a country where you experience a lot of differences, and that is what is beautiful. Like you can wake up in the morning in the coffee region, you know, in a coffee farm, beautifully located, have a nice coffee, you know, 25 degrees. The same day, you'll be hiking in 4,000 meters, you know, to a lake, and with chilly weather and, you know, wind and everything. And the day after, you'll be, you know, gearing up beside a glacier. And the same afternoon, again, you'll be sitting in a small town in 25 degrees again. So it's like all these changes, and the difference is what I would focus, you know, the experience on, to see the difference in such a small country in a way, but big differences. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, really, really attractive. Yeah, for sure. And what about you know, over this sort of period, you know, from 2010, you know, you've obviously had to, you know, recruit and train up staff to support, you know, what we do on these trips. You know, how has that process sort of worked over time, you know, in terms of, you know, different staff, you know, obviously guides and, you know, cooks and things like that. How have you managed to sort of develop that?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's been also a very long process, because we started again from zero back in the day. So we had to train our own people. But fortunately, it's been a parallel process with all the mountain climbers that were involved with tourism. So there is an association that started, I don't recall the year precisely, but it's called the ACME. It's like a funny name, which is the Colombian Association for Mountaineering and Rock Climbing. And this association, it's focused on training, and it started, I think it was 2013 or 2014, I don't recall very well, but it started around there, and these were guys who were being trained in Peru and Bolivia, that were undergoing the IFMGA certification process, and decided to gather together and train some other people in Colombia and start like a small training school. And this has evolved during the years, and now it's quite professional, very nice courses. You can train yourself up during a lapse of 2 years, I think, if you do all the training courses. And that is the school we have in Colombia, and it's working very well. And all our guides now are going through this education, even for the people that is working like cooks. There is like courses, and not so much for cooking, but, you know, like to have the basic WAFA certifications, for rescue and first aid and all that. So all our guides are certified by this association in Colombia, and some of them are also undergoing either the IFMTA or they are fully certified, which there's not that many that are fully certified, but now we have some. Years ago it was not. So it's like an ongoing process, and now since Ecuador has the certification again, or they got it for, I think, a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they are certified countries. So now it's easier for Colombians to travel to Ecuador and do these, the last step, like being a IFMTA guide.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, one of the things generally about Colombia, I suppose, and perhaps we have people, ask about, other countries that we visit, given the sort of, all over the world, you've got, various sort of political issues. I mean, what's your sort of perception of the security situation in Colombia nowadays? I mean, obviously, you just mentioned the size of Bogota. Any big city, there's clearly risks associated with visiting, but more sort of generally, what would you say about that?
Yeah, well, that's been a long process too with Colombia, because of course we had a 70 years of civil war plus all the drug dealing issues we have had along the many last decades. So coming out of that bad reputation has taken a lot of years. But on the ground, I can say that the country is pretty safe. As you mentioned, of course, big cities are big cities, and you always have to take care on the big cities. But rural areas and small towns are really easy going in Colombia, especially the ones in the mountains are pretty safe. So I would say in general terms, is a safe country to travel in. I mean, as good as Peru or Bolivia or the other countries in the continent. Yeah. So that I think it's we're assured to say. But yeah, big cities. That's how it is always with them. But usually our clients are always, staying in the nice part of the city, in the areas where you have a good level of safety for moving around.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that's really helpful and gives us sort of a bit more of an overview of the history that we've had. I mean, it's 13 years we've been working together. Obviously, we've got some, we've got trips that we're offering for this, 2024 and into 25. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at sort of developing that program and maybe having more of a trekking offering as well in Colombia. So yeah, thanks for all your help and support, developing these, as you say, innovative new trips over the years, and looking after the people that we've sent over to Colombia. So yeah, look forward to continuing working together. Yeah,
definitely. It's been a pleasure all these years. A lot of adventures have been, challenging. But now I think we have a very nice program, and I think for people that wants to, know a very unknown country, because Colombia has this. I mean, my impression in general terms with people is when you mention Colombia, people really don't know how to place it or what to think about it, because, Peru, Machu Picchu, and, Ecuador, about the Galapagos Island. But Colombia is a country where you don't really have a clear idea what it offers. And it actually has a lot to offer because of our geographical position, having 2 oceans, and all this is what makes it interesting due to the diversity of the country. So I think for people that want to see something different and wants to experience something kind of out of the box when you have these iconic places in other countries. So I think it's a great opportunity, and for trekking and easy mountaineering, it's a great place to go, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for your time,
Yeah.
Juan Carlos. And yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch.
Very welcome. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. Okay. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.